Next story, a bit of a sad story that might also make you kind of angry, is that food bank usage in Toronto is at its highest level since 2007. And maybe I'm not even doing it justice by saying that it's since 2007, because that's literally just how far the chart goes back, right? So, like before 2007, I think this organization, maybe they didn't exist, because this is an organization called Daily Bread Food Bank. I'm not sure if this organization just didn't exist before 2007, or if they just didn't track stuff before 2007. But since 2007, as early as the chart would allow us to go back, the food bank usage has hit the highest on a per month basis. And this is and if you look at the trend, I put up the chart in the docket. If you look at the trend, it's not just like up by a little bit, it's literally like hockey sticking up. So you can see that the first spike up was due to the pandemic, right? It started in just after January of 2020. So maybe you can argue that that's understandable, right? The pandemic hit a lot of people hard, but you would kind of maybe expect the pandemic, after the pandemic is over, for it to maybe go back down. But that hasn't been the case. In fact, it's accelerated even more after the most of the pandemic was over. So if you look at the chart, I think it's like somewhere around January of 2022 where it hit maybe like a local bottom, and then it just skyrocketed back up harder and faster than ever before. Right. So that's the first piece of news. And then the second piece of news is that we've talked about the federal budget, the liberal budget proposed by the federal liberals who are in charge right now, who's headed by Justin Trudeau, our current prime minister. And yeah, we talked ad nauseum about the budget and how it's bad for Canadians, and just basically a thousand reasons why we don't like it, right? But it appears that also this sentiment is not just us. So there's a poll that was conducted, and it was an online poll, so maybe you can argue that online polls aren't exactly the most accurate. But I would argue that maybe online polls tend to skew like younger folks, and younger folks tend to skew more left leaning, right? So if anything, considering that Justin Trudeau is a left, like the Liberals that Justin Trudeau is the head of, is a left leaning party, you would maybe expect younger people to be like, more supportive of stuff that Trudeau has done or is doing. Usually I find that online polls tend to be left leaning, but according to this online poll, at least 53% of people are either angry or annoyed at this federal budget that was being proposed, and only 9% is happy about it. And the other 38% is just neutral, right? So maybe they just don't know enough about it to really have an opinion, which is definitely an okay thing to do, right? So I would highly recommend that if you don't know enough about a topic, to not have like very strongly convicted opinions, right? So try to like understand the problem. I see this problem a lot. I'm not like saying this to you, Tristan, or to our audience members, because I'm sure everyone here is well aware of this, but I see this a lot online where people have really strongly held opinions, but they don't actually know anything about the topic. So yeah, maybe 38% of people, they just like, I just don't care, or I just don't know enough to really have an opinion. But yeah, the shocking statistics is between the 53% versus 9. Um, and lastly, uh, here's the latest 338 Canada, which is a polling website that polls, how well the parties are doing. This is the latest 338 Canada popular vote projection. And that very last spike that you can see on the conservative, so the blue is conservative, the 44% one, right? So that very last spike is just because of the news of the budget, right? So I guess because people are angry about the budget, more people flock to the conservatives. So it's not anything that the conservatives did right. It's just like people are literally angry at Trudeau even more after the budget, so they flock to the conservatives. At least that's what it looks like is happening, right? And you can tell that that's probably what's happening because, again, like the spike in the conservatives is accompanied by a similar amount of drop in both the liberals and the NDP support numbers. So I think if you add up kind of the amount dropped of support between like the NDP and the liberals, you would probably equate to the amount that the conservatives spiked up. So yeah, it just like there's a lot of news that I just threw at you. So maybe like I know we talked about the budget a lot, but I just kind of want to get maybe your opinions or your reaction to any of the pieces of news that I just told you. And what do you think about the news? And are you concerned about Canada's future? Because in my opinion, this is pretty concerning news. But yeah, take it.
Um, yeah, so I think there's definitely reason to be concerned about Canada's future in general. The food bank usage, well, obviously we have more people in Toronto now than we did in the past, which may mean that, there's more people who could be at a food bank now than previously. I still think that the amount that it is exponentially grown, like we haven't just grown, like we have, like Toronto has grown a lot, but like I'm assuming that we didn't gain, 200,000 people who just went directly to the food bank, right? So obviously it seems to me that the food bank situation is clearly a lot more people are hurting than they were in the past. And that's why there's a lot of more usage and there's clearly a cost of living crisis going on in Canada currently, um, which may be encouraging more people to head to the food bank for to help with their you know the cost of living and getting access to food when they can't afford it, right? um, and the help help them make ends meet, right? So I think that's obviously a very worrying trend in general. I don't think it's ever a good sign when your country's food bank usage, and I guess this is just Toronto, but like in general, like having a big increase of food bank usage is not usually a good sign by any means. Um, and then with regards to the budget, I think we have kind of beat the budget to death a little bit in the sense of like I think it's pretty clear that we're not super impressed with it, or at least I wasn't. I don't want to necessarily speak for you, but I wasn't super impressed with the budget. And I think it's pretty clear that most people were not very impressed with the budget either.
It's okay. You can speak for me. In fact, I would recommend you use even harsher words than what you
Harsh
just.
terms, straight to the jugular. Yes, this budget was pretty. It was not very impressive, and in fact, I think it was probably a colossal mistake. A lot of the stuff they have on it, just and honestly, I think the Canadians were really they clearly are not agreeing with the budget. You can just see that with how the Liberals have lost so much popularity because after the budget was released, and I think a lot of it also comes down to the fact that there is the Conservatives have a lot of ammunition on the Liberals right now, and the fact that the Liberals were toting affordable housing in 2015 for their budget, and then they're back with another fun proposal for affordable housing in their 2024 budget, and you're just like everything has gotten way worse since 2015. What are you doing? And I think that the fact that the Conservatives could call them out on that made it really, you know, it seemed really disingenuous from the Liberals that this is like, oh, clearly such a top priority, except for the part where it's gotten five five times worse since we took office, right? So I think it's pretty difficult, and I think it's pretty clear that people are angry, people want to switch, and as always, I think it's a little bit unfortunate the way that Canadian politics works, in the sense that we basically have two choices, and even if you aren't necessarily super aligned with one, if you're not super aligned with either of the two main parties, the Liberals or the Conservatives, you're kind of in a position where if you vote for anyone else, you're just throwing away your vote. So you have to kind of vote for whoever is going to be the most aligned, and you know is going to be hopefully bringing you a better scenario now and in the future than whoever has, however it's been done previously. And I think based on that, I think it's pretty clear that most people are leaning towards the Conservatives for that future. And I think that this budget has basically really pushed the limit of like Canadians' patience, because I think that it seems like a lot of Canadians looked at the budget or heard about the budget and went, "This is a bunch of BS. I'm voting Conservative." And I think that's really why there's been such a divergence in the Liberal support. I think that there's just been a lot of people who saw the budget and were just like, that's it. We can't do another, you know, whatever, 5+ years of gonna make our houses affordable again, except they're gonna go up, 500%. And I think that people are pretty much done with that. So I think it's likely to be a Conservative victory anyway. I think that's not really what necessarily we're talking about, but I think that definitely the Conservative victory is kind of where I'm leaning towards at this point.
The big question is, will you help out the Conservatives in achieving their inevitable victory?
Well, we'll get on to the next topic, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, actually, the next topic is a little bit maybe controversial as well, but we'll save that for a little bit later. Let me just kind of maybe provide my opinion first, right? So, before our audience members kind of call us out, or at least call me out for being biased or whatever, because I think for the past few episodes I have kind of maybe made some partisan political views or opinions public, but let me just say that I have never voted for the Conservatives before in my life in a federal election. Now, granted, I'm only 28 years old, so it's only been 10 years since I was eligible to vote. So there hasn't been that many elections, because on average they're like every 4 years. Sometimes you have a minority government that gets voted because of no confidence or one reason or another, but usually it's like on average like maybe slightly less than 4 years. So there hasn't been that many federal elections since I was eligible to vote. However, out of the federal elections that have happened, I have actually never voted to this day for the Conservatives in a federal election. But the way that things are going, this next election will be my first time that I vote Conservative. And the reason is, I'm not trying to be like partisan here, but the reason is just simply that we cannot continue down the same path that we're continuing down right now. Right? That's just quite simply, like, I don't care if the Conservatives were leading us down the current path that the Liberals are leading us down, then I would vote for the other party. Right? Then I would vote for the Liberals to get the Conservatives out. Like, I don't really have party loyalty. I vote for whoever I think at that moment is gonna fix issues or move us in at least in the right direction to fixing issues, or at least stop moving in the direction that makes situations worse, right? And what we've seen from this federal budget, as we've mentioned, makes a lot of things worse, because they're increasing the deficit, and even when they decrease the deficit by their own projections, they're still going to be running a deficit by 2027, right? So yes, the deficit is projected to go down like on like a year over year basis, but they're still running a deficit by their own projections, and this is like in ideal conditions if nothing goes wrong, right? So for people who are not well versed in economics, they maybe, you hear the word deficit and you don't know what it means, and your brain just turns off. Deficit just basically means you're spending more money than you're taking in, right? So how are you going to make up for the shortfall? Well, you either print the money or you tax people more, right? So neither solution is very good, because when you tax people more, well, guess what? Like, people don't want to do business, people leave, and it's just like our taxes are already high enough, right? It's just politically unpalatable as well. But yeah, that's one option, right? And then the other option is more often chosen, which is to print money, right? That causes inflation. And if you like, inflation has become an issue recently just because of how bad it's been. But if you look at inflation, it's never actually been at 2%, if you think about it. So anything that you would want to buy, which is like, groceries so that you can live, or just, post-secondary education for your kids, they've inflated at more than 2% year over year for a long time now. Housing, right? Especially in Canada. So yeah, it's just not a good way to run your economy when you're constantly running these deficits. And there's no reason why we should be running these deficits if the government can just curb their spending, right? So in the federal budget, we talked about this in a previous episode as well. The government is spending billions of dollars on a new AI program to promote AI. It's like, why is the government getting involved in investing in tech and being a VC, right? Just leave that to the private sector, because the government has not, at least this government, this liberal government, has not shown a lot of competency in selecting the best tech firms to invest in, as exemplified by what happened with the ArriveCan app.